This is the Sales Whisperer Podcast with Wes Schaefer, session number 4. Welcome, everybody. This is Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer. Today, I've got DJ Waldow, author of The Rebel's Guide to Email Marketing. DJ, how you doing?
I am quite well, Mr. Sales Whisperer. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for making this time on a Friday. A little background. It is, what's today? June 14th, 2013. DJ was a speaker at Infusionsoft's inaugural PartnerCon back in November. It was November, right, of 2012. It was good to have him there. Obviously, folks know Infusionsoft as an email marketing tool, and his book on email marketing. You know, I took a lot of notes during his short presentation. Should have been a little longer. But I heard you. I watched your presentation this week on, it was sponsored by Entrepreneur Magazine or Entrepreneurs.
Oh, that Google Hangout, yeah.
The Google Hangout, right?
Yeah, so, recorded in this very room with the same very equipment that we're talking on today.
Yeah, I recognize it.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's funny. Like, email is dead, right? They keep bringing it up. And but email is not dead, is it?
I mean, it's not even close. You know, the example that I give, I think I did this in Phoenix too. I can't recall now, but the example I give now, I actually talk every presentation. You know, I dispel that myth right away, and the way I do it is I say, I mean, I'll give you stats to back this up too. It's not just anecdotal, but you know, what I usually say to people is, you know, about 5 minutes into my talk at this point, I say, okay, how many of you have checked email in the last, you know, I don't know if I did this. Yeah. How many have checked in the last, you know, in the last week? And everybody kind of giggles. Well, of course, the last week, of course I've checked email. Okay. How many of you have checked in the last 24 hours? Still, I mean, 99% of the people in the room have their hands up. And then, you know, I say, how many people have checked their email since I've been up on stage in the last 5 minutes? And then there's that uncomfortable laughter, and it's, you know, still 3/4 of the room. And, you know, people rely on email for just about everything. And people might complain about it. They might say, I get too much email. There's all sorts of systems in place to manage your inbox. I mean, Gmail just came out with something that automatically classifies your email into, you know, different components. But the reality is we live in our inbox. It just hasn't gone away yet. And I see it changing and evolving in the future, you know, becoming more social, possibly becoming more, but it's really becoming more integrated in what we do, more than going away. I mean, rarely do you have somebody say, oh, that's great. Yeah. Can you tweet that to me? You know, or, oh, post it on my Facebook wall. You know, I mean, you could, right? You could, but I mean, sometimes you say text it to me, maybe, but for the most part, if it's something tangible, you want it in your inbox. Why? Because you're going to see it in your inbox. You're going to interact with it there.
Right. You know, during you and I on the warm up to this, right? We don't kind of like when we go to the driving range. I don't want to hit too much because I'll use up all my good shots, right? So I mean,
exactly.
We were using up some good shots, and hey, let's just hit record, right? So, you know, on this conversation, I want to talk about some specifics. I'm all about rubber meets the road, right? So I want to get into specifics on email, the tips, you know, the things, the must-dos, the must-not-dos. But, you know, also in the bigger picture, we do email because it's part of marketing. So I wanted to touch on, you know, some social media stuff, too, the dialogue we had about Facebook. But
yeah.
So I just want to throw it out there before I forget, because I'm a typical entrepreneur with ADD, and I'll go off on 37 tangents, and we'll run out of time.
I'm not even sure who I'm talking to anymore. I already forgot that. So if that makes you
feel... Well, hold on. I got to check my email real quick. Something just came in.
See? Oh, okay. Exactly.
Okay, where was I? So let's cover some, you know, rubber meets the road. In your presentation, you've had some tips. I've got your book here in front of me. You know, when you have only a few minutes, what do you tell people? What do you tell people about email? You know, let's start with what must they do when it comes to email marketing.
Yeah. So first of all, I should say, as you know, with the book writing process, you know, the book, while it's, I guess in August is actually going to be when it's been out for a year. But, you know, the writing process is before that. So, you know, it's been over a year since I actually wrote that book. Mm-hmm. And not that the contents of it has changed necessarily, but I'm seeing the world. I have a little bit of a different bend on things lately. And when you ask me the question, what is it that you should do and what's important when it comes to email. My new, and this isn't anything new, by the way, it's just new. It's new it's kind of the one thing that's stuck in my head lately is this idea of being human. Talked about in this Google Hangout with Peter Shank and others earlier this week. And it's the idea of being human and earning trust. I think so often people focus on, I've got to get the subject line that's going to get somebody to open my email, or I've got to have the best offer that somebody can't turn down, or all the grow your list, and all these things are important. Don't get me wrong, but if you have not established trust with your subscribers, if you are not human in your communication, so that they want to open your message, they look forward to opening your email, they don't cringe when they see Sales Whisperer as the from name, right? They don't get nervous about it. They don't say, "Oh, more crap from this guy." That's the key. You have to earn your subscribers' trust. And I know a lot of people in the social media space have said something similar to this before, but social media doesn't all of a sudden, just because you're on social media doesn't make your product be a good product. It doesn't automatically mean that you have good service. It doesn't mean that you have the best price, any of those things. Good companies, companies that have all of those things in place already, tend to do better with social media, and they tend to do better with email because they've already earned that trust. They've earned the right to this is why the whole book is about breaking the rules. If you've earned the trust of your subscribers, you can put whatever the heck you want in the subject line. You can send them 10 emails a day if they like you, if they trust you, if there's value in your email.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think on your thing this week, you sent out free beer, right?
Yep, all caps, free beer. And you know what happened with that email? I actually used this in my presentation. Now, somebody wrote back and they said, I opened that email, I don't particularly like beer, but I opened that email because it was from you, DJ, because I trusted you, and I know that subject line was going to teach me something about email marketing. I knew that there was value in that.
Right.
And that's the key, that you got to earn trust. I mean, I think you got to argue that's the key to marketing in general. Forget email. Any type of marketing, any type of business relationship or personal relationship, you have to trust the person or the company or the brand that's sending you that message, or nothing else matters.
So how do they build trust in the beginning? Because trust takes time, right? Yep. And everybody is pushed for time, pressed for time. But obviously, should we act a certain way? Should we follow the rules in the beginning?
Yeah, good question.
Before we can be crazy, or, do we build a brand and they see my crazy opt-in, so I'm okay to be opt-in and break the rules from the very beginning because they wanted my crazy free report, Yeah,
I think the key to that is, the analogy a lot of times when it comes to email marketing, or again, any marketing, is the analogy is a relationship, like a, human-to-human relationship, right? So the idea is you don't walk into a room and say, hey, I'm DJ Waldow, I wrote a book, I know a lot about email, come be my client, right? You take that slowly, and you may not talk about yourself right away. You might nurture that relationship and grow the relationship. And I think it's the same thing when it comes to email. And the key is on that opt-in page. If you're going to ask somebody for their email address, there are a couple things. There is the what's in it for me, right? I'm going to give you my email address. You're going to give me a free ebook. Are you going to give me? It doesn't have to be something free, by the way. It could be a discount. It could be just that I'm going to give you information that is going to be so valuable to your business that you can't resist it. So don't be fooled into thinking you've got to give away something for free, although it is an effective tactic. But on that page too, that's where you start the relationship. You start setting the expectations of what they're going to get. So and again, going back to the human, on my opt-in page, I changed this a while ago where you opt into my page, you go to a landing page that says thank you, sets expectations, expect an email in your inbox. This is what it's going to be like. This is the subject line. This is the contents. You want to see a preview of what it's going to look like? Here it is. And at the bottom, I've got a video. Different depends on what landing page you come in. Some of my videos are of Yoda, the do or do not, there is no try. I've got a video of the twin talking babies that are talking back and forth with each other in their diapers in front of the. Just kind of human stuff, and that starts to I believe, I'm not a psychologist, but I believe that starts to break down the I'm this mysterious guy over here versus, hey, he's actually kind of just like us. And it also weeds out the people who are like, Yoda, I hate that guy. Or little babies, what are they doing on there? I don't like kids. But I do think that starts to establish the trust. And then from there, it's your job as an email marketer to continue to deliver on that value. And that's the key to getting more opens, more clicks, and more whatever matters to you.
So what have you seen, though, from an email perspective? Because, I always tell people, being an entrepreneur, it's like trying to change spark plugs on a car driving down the interstate at 70 miles an hour, right? It's like we can't stop. So
I can't change spark plugs either way, so it doesn't matter if the car is moving or not. But
Jane, stop this crazy thing, right? And Jetsons.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, email gets better if the opt-in is better, and the opt-in is better if the website's more human, and the website's more human if I show pictures of babies. So it's like, this big circle of marketing life, right?
Yep.
But would you say, is email the most important thing when it comes to building a business, or when can it be the most important thing? When can it make or break you? Do you have some examples of where people got their act together and turned it around? Are there some things corporate schmucks should stop doing and maybe tweak? Or does this only apply to entrepreneurs?
I think it applies to everybody. To me, the biggest mistake you can make when it comes to email marketing is not give your potential subscribers, a way to opt in, or put so many barriers in place that they can't opt in. I do this exercise. I did this when I was at University of. I taught a class at University of Utah Business School a couple years ago, and I did this exercise where we went through and said, okay, find, just randomly pick 5 different companies that aren't named Facebook, Google, whatever. I think we talk about this in the book too a little bit, and find their opt-in. The first step is find their opt-in. There's a whole bunch of other exercises like how long does it take you to opt in, and the reality is, just there's no science behind this, but 2 out of 5 of the companies didn't even have an opt-in on their site. And so I think you have to have that on there. As an entrepreneur, as any business, you're never going to get it right. There's always moving parts. My website, I remember launching my website, and I loved it. I went through the process, and now I look at my website and really needs a refresh. And I look at those web forms, I'm like, okay, I've had the 2 talking babies on for 6 months. Maybe I should put something else. Maybe it's, but the reality is you're only going there once for the most part. So it's new. It's a new experience for somebody else. And I think, I'm sure you talk about this as an entrepreneur too. There are a lot of moving parts, and you're never going to get it all right. And, I'm a perfectionist, a recovering perfectionist, I should say. I have to keep telling myself that, and then it'll become true. And you have to, you're not going to get it all right. And I think if you get that opt-in going, if you get the human behind it, obviously the other important thing is the first couple emails you send have to be valuable, or you're going to lose people. And then the rest you just tweak and iterate on as you go through.
I was checking out your site. You send people, your homepage is like a /hello, right?
Yep. It's yeah.
And you find, I love that. I'm talking to my techies. I'm like, hey, I like that. How can we make that happen? I'm using, right now, I've used pop-ups. I'm using a thing called Hybrid Connect right now that gives me the ability to do a pop-up, but I can do pop-unders, all this stuff. That seems to be working okay. But, what have you found? And
so I need to write a blog post about this at some point. It's, as an entrepreneur, it's one of the things that's on your list.
Oh, yeah.
It's in this book somewhere. I don't know where.
I have a list that shows me where my lists are. Yeah.
You'll appreciate this. I wrote down something just yesterday. It said, write down goals. That's on my list. I saw a post by, I don't know if you know John Michael Morgan, or John Morgan. His website's John Michael Morgan. Okay. He wrote a book called, looking for it on my shelf, Brand Against the Machine, I think it's called.
Okay.
He wrote a post today about making sure you have your goals in front of you at all times, and so I wrote down write your goals. Wait, what was the question? Welcome. Okay, so
something about the price of lasagna in South Africa.
So so what I use actually that can I talk about different tools and I mean, is that okay?
I do.
So I use something called, it's actually a free plugin right now through a company called LeadBright.
LeadBright, I know. I went and checked it out.
Oh, okay. So Clay Collins, he's actually an Infusionsoft user. He's it's a very easy integration with Infusionsoft.
Yep.
You know, the downside to it, of course, is it's still a template, so you don't have a ton of flexibility. I mean, when I look at that, waldowsocial.com/hello, it makes my, hair in my arm raise up a little bit because it's not the prettiest thing. I mean, I did the best that I could with what I had.
Hey, my first impression, and like I said, I just checked it out literally last week. I loved it. I was like,
oh, okay, well,
it was
there you go.
Clean. It was simple, right? It's not intrusive and it kind of shocked me. I'm expecting to go to this big elaborate website, see this author, yada yada. I mean, I was expecting your book. It's like, hey, here's a simple opt-in. Cool.
Yeah, and it's got a little link at the bottom that says no thanks.
Yep.
And so I can tell you anecdotally, because I need to actually go dig into Infusionsoft and see the real numbers. But I have the way I have different forms set up, and obviously this through Infusionsoft, and you can probably tell me a better way to do this. But the way that I have it set up is I have basically the same form that's copied in different places, and I have a different hidden field. So I know when I actually get an email come in that says that I got a new subscriber, the subject line of the email I have even says where it came from, so I know. So I could go back and do that, but I can tell you just from looking at that stuff, 40 to 50% of my new opt-ins come from that page.
Nice.
And the reason that I do that, and the reason that I'm okay with it being not the prettiest of pages, is that, this, what's the number one page visited on your website? By far the number one page.
Homepage, baby.
Always your homepage. It's always your homepage. And so if you can give people a way to, somebody else said to me, they're like, I've got an opt-in on the top of my page. I'm working on one on the sidebar. I've got it in different places. And I've had people say, I didn't even realize there was an opt-in on your page. I was looking for it. I didn't see it. And I think it's pretty obvious. But if you can't miss it when you go to waldowsocial.com, so you get redirected to /hello.
Right.
It's been very effective for me. Very, very effective.
Cool.
Was that a long way of saying it works?
That's cool. But, so I'll tell you, on Infusionsoft, are you using the dashboard?
I am.
All right. Use the dashboard. Go to your web form summary report. Add that little widget to your desktop, and you can see how they're trending. At least keep it right in front of you.
Ooh. Website summary form.
Yeah, go to marketing and reports, and there's a web form summary report. It will not update automatically, but I just go in about once a week, and I'll just move the calendar ahead of weeks. I'm just always kind of looking at the trends and keeping in the back of my brain what my numbers are looking like. So
I like that.
Check that out, baby.
Infusionsoft lesson as part of this podcast. I like it.
Hey, man. And we'll even talk about video later if we have time.
I like it.
But so do you have insight on pop-ups, pop-unders, things like that? I mean...
Yeah. We talk about this in the book. This is kind of one of those myths that people. It's been this unwritten rule in the email marketing world for a while that never use a pop-up. And I think the reason for that is more because when you think of the word pop-up, you go to that site that you didn't mean to go to, quote unquote, and all of a sudden your screen just gets
kind of like a Michigan football site.
Well, that's the site you meant to go to. I mean, if you want to see Devin Gardner, who was just recently compared to RG3, but anyways, yes. No, but you get all these pop-ups, and I think that's the people said, oh, you should never, that's really intrusive. Everybody hates pop-ups, and most people I've spoken with about this, and we wrote the book too. The answer is most people do hate pop-ups. I hate pop-ups, but they work.
But they work.
But they work. Not for everybody, but they work.
Right.
And if you've noticed lately, you are seeing more and more individuals and big companies and brands using pop-ups. And I've seen this trend. Again, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a data guy, so I'm just telling you what I've seen. But I'm a consumer, right? So I've seen this, and there's more and more pop-ups that are appearing. And there's so many different ways to do them. In the book, we talk about the company Funny or Die, who the way they do theirs is that you have to be 3 pages deep on their website for it to appear.
Okay.
And 80% of their list has come from a pop-up. And this is a list of over 1 million.
Wow.
You can do it where at the end of you scroll, so at the end of a blog post it appears, which is sometimes a logical place for it to be. You can do what I'm doing. This Clay Collins calls it a welcome gate. You can do it after a certain amount of time. So greatest.com, 82% of their list comes from the pop-up, and they do it after, I think, 90 seconds if you're on the site.
What's that?
Greatest, like you are the greatest. Really interesting company, actually. They do sort of like they focus on health. They focus on productivity, healthy eating, exercise, that sort of thing.
Right.
Just generally good, making you feel good and happy about yourself. And so there's a lot of different. In fact, the most recent one that I've seen done is Busted Tees. They're using a company. I can't remember the name of it, but they actually track your mouse movement. So if you're on their site, and this is an expensive service to use, so probably not for entrepreneurs, but if you they track the movement with your mouse, and as you start to move your mouse up to close the tab, or close the window, that's when the pop-up appears.
Actually, that's not expensive. There's things that have that, built in. I don't know off the top of my head. That the Hybrid Connect that I use might have that as an option. I've used Pop-Up Domination. I think that's a $97 plug-in.
Yeah, let me be clear. There's different ways to do it, though. The way they've done it is very. So some of those pop-ups will come up in this little dialog box,
right?
Which I think are kind of the more annoying ones, versus one that sort of let me make the distinction too. Versus a pop over, which is sort of where the screen grays out in the background,
right?
And then you've got the pop over there, and there's like those old school Windows ones is what I think of, where they're like the big X in the corner and stuff. Yeah, right. So there's ways to do it, but the key to all this stuff is you gotta test and see what works best for your audience.
Yeah.
I have a confession to make on that. I actually tried to pop up on my site, was not that effective.
Uh-huh.
For me, it wasn't effective, so I got rid of it.
Yeah, cool. I've experimented with different ones. Yeah, I'm always tweaking it. I've had those, in the header, and my style too. And I'm not a big analytical guy either. I'm getting better at studying my numbers. I've got people that help me, but personally, if it's there as soon as I get there, I don't mind it so much. So that's what mine is. You hit my site, and that thing just comes right in.
Yep.
And it's off to the side, but it's still big, but you can still see the page, so it's, and like I said, that's my style. And sometimes I go against what I teach, right? Because I say, you are not your client.
Totally agree. That's why I'm very open about that, though, is I believe in pop-ups, but I've tested it for me, and I probably will test it again later, some other way. But right now, for me, that welcome gate is by far the biggest. I gotta tell Clay about that. I think I say Clay like I know him.
What's up,
what up, Clay? Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. All right, what should people not do? We're breaking the rules, but are there some rules we shouldn't break?
You don't want to do anything that gets you put in jail. So there in the United States there is the canned spam law. So you can't send. Deceptive subject lines. You must have an unsubscribe. But those things for the most part, if you're deceptive subject line is a little bit one that sort of up for interpretation. I think you'd have to get into a court of law to really determine that.
Right.
But the other one is with the canned spam stuff of having a physical address at the bottom and having a way for them to opt out or unsubscribe and honoring that unsubscribe within 10 days. If you use any kind of email provider or marketing automation platform, they will force that in because
it happens.
Because they're on the hook for it too if you're not following that. So I think the only thing I would say about that is I think you have to. I wouldn't say there's anything that you should not do ever. I think if you've tested it and you've proven it doesn't work for you, then I wouldn't do that.
Right.
I know it sounds maybe kind of obvious, but I think too often we do things in our business and professional lives because that's just the way we've always done them. And it's like the people that have a double opt-in on their list and they've just never tried single opt-in. There's pros and cons to both methods, and so I'd be hard pressed to say never do something. I'm not personally a fan of using first name personalization in an email or in a subject line, but yet just today I advised the client that they should, right? So I'm going to have them test it and see if it works for their audience. I had a client recently who, you hear this, don't put all big images in, and we even talk in the book about that's one rule that you should try to break.
Right.
And so they're doing all images, and I tested with them. I said, well, let's just try putting in some text also. It bombed. It totally bombed. You would think it would be the opposite. Image-only email worked for them, and the reason is they train their subscribers to turn images on.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter for them. So I don't think there's anything that you, other than doing anything illegal, there's nothing that you should not be trying and testing with your audience to see if it works.
So what about double opt-ins? When I got started with Infusionsoft back in 2008, it was all the rage. I didn't do anything. If you didn't double opt-in, tough luck, buddy. You're not getting my stuff.
Yep.
And then the trend seemed to be kind of moving away from it. So I don't know, 2010 roughly, I think I got away from it, just stopped doing it altogether. Now with Infusionsoft's Campaign Builder, I've learned a little hybrid way where I now send it to everybody, but there's a bypass. So after 15 minutes, if they don't, they'll still get the content. What have you found, and what are you recommending?
Yeah, there's two sides to this always. I mean, I wrote a blog post about why I personally think that single opt-in is the answer.
Okay.
And certainly you could argue it depends on the industry, depends on what sort of leads you're trying to capture. But the argument that I always hear for why people should do double opt-in is there's two arguments. One, they're concerned of bots. So they're concerned that somebody is just automatically signing up to their list, some computer hacker or whatever, and they're sending out email to bad addresses.
Right.
Well, my counter to that is, if that's the case, and you're using any sort of good email service provider or marketing automation platform, that first email that you send out to them is going to hard bounce, and you'll never send to them anyways, ever again.
Right.
And the second side to that is, even with single opt-in, that's still the case. If you just do single opt-in, you're going to see that's going to play out. The reason for me that I don't believe strongly in double opt-in is there's too much that can go wrong. If I've raised my hand and I said, yes, Wes, I want to get emails from you, I've taken the time. It's not like social media where I've just got to click a button and say, sign me, follow or like. I've got to enter, at a minimum, I've got to enter in my email address and click submit. And so now by sending that double opt-in, you're two things are happening. You're basically saying, are you really sure? I want to just make sure you're really sure. I used to work at an email provider called Bronto in North Carolina, and I was in sales at the time. And my boss at the time, he would always say to me, he goes, DJ, why are you still on the phone with that customer or that prospect? He's like, you closed the deal 20 minutes ago. And I was like, well, yeah, I like to talk. And we were talking about, this or that or beer or whatever we were talking about. He goes, get off the phone. And, he wanted me to close more deals. He always said to me, stop when they say yes.
Yeah.
And when I think of double opt-in, to me, that's the equivalent of saying, I've already said yes. Now you're going to ask me again. And keep in mind, too, that confirmation email might sit in a spam folder somewhere.
Right.
It might get lost in the ether of the internet somewhere. It might be accidentally marked as spam. It might just be ignored altogether. Then you've got this group of people who said, I want to get your email, and they're not getting your email.
Right. So maybe I should do a blog post on how to do a double opt-in and still send info. I like them apples.
But here's my question to you, if I may ask the interviewer a question as well.
Fine.
Why would you have the double opt-in but then not totally? I mean, instead of doing that, why wouldn't you just say you are subscribed and then send that welcome email 15 minutes later that says, hey, thanks so much for subscribing, blah, 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 whatever the case is.
The biggest reason is deliverability goes up a little bit, at least with Infusionsoft, when they double opt-in. That's all.
Fair enough. Okay.
And like I said, Because I can bypass it, so it'll send the double opt-in. 15 minutes later, even if they don't click it, I still send the info. So it's I see it as not really having anything to lose in that point.
Fair enough. I can't argue that point.
Yeah. So, and like I said, I learned that, I don't know, 6 months ago when they came out with a new feature. I think it was actually the fall release, and so in the fall of 2012, the little email confirmation thing came out, but and I figured out a little workaround.
Sounds like you need to update your book.
It's in there, baby. This thing's updated in March.
There you go. There you go.
That's the nice thing with print on demand, good old Create Space. I can update this puppy anytime.
Oh, is that how you went through? Like a self-publish?
Yeah. You know,
cool.
I'm not a famous guy like you, but I aspire to be. I have your picture on my wall.
I am by no... First of all, as I told you, as I was telling your audience, I am in no way... I'm shocked. I'm still shocked to this day that I have a book that is published, that I wrote. I mean, as you know, the process, it's not glamorous. You know, we had on our podcast, we interviewed just today. Are you familiar with Dan Pink?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
So we interviewed him today on our podcast. Cool. And first of all, super nice, down-to-earth guy. And we talked a lot about writing. I mean, this is a guy who's got 5 best-selling books. Right. You know, talk about, you and I. We're like ants. And he talked about the process, and it was really fascinating. I mean, he writes 500 words a day when he's writing a book. You know, he has a set rule. He writes 500 words a day. And he basically said, too, though, the process, it's not always all that fun. You know, there's days that he loves writing, there's days that he hates it. And this guy does this for a living.
Yep.
And so it's a tricky process for sure. I don't know what got us talking about that, but anyways.
Talking about book, like the books behind me, that's all a prop. I mean, I have 2 books, one of them's not even colored in.
Nice.
And it's that one. So.
Well, I have a small shelf over here, and then this is my Mitch Joel book that's on my short list to read. Control-Alt-Delete.
Very nice.
So
let's talk about marketing in general. So as we were beginning the call before we start recording, we're talking about social media. I was bagging on you because I sent a Facebook friend request and you just ignore me, just sitting there in purgatory. I'm like, does he like me? Does he not like me?
Double opt-in. Double opt-in. There you go.
I know. Didn't double opt-in. And so, you and I are similar in that, we are our business. So, but we also have families. So where and how do you figure out how to draw the line? How much do you share? How much is open? Me personally, if somebody sends me a friend request and I look at their profile, they're not a freak, an obvious freak, I'll accept it. If they post stupid stuff, if they're just ignorant, I may just hide them from my news feed. If they're out and out crazy, then I'll unfriend them.
Right.
But I don't know. I blur the two. It seems like you've got a little tighter delineation between.
I'd say I mostly blur. As we were talking about before, I mean, on the actual friend requests. Sorry, my wife is walking in here. Yes, you may take this. On my actual friend request.
Hello, Mama Waldow.
she's smiling.
Sounds important.
She's smiling. She says this sounds very important.
She doesn't know me very well, does she?
She does not know you well.
It's like, you know what? Just walk in. It's a sales whisper. It's all good.
And she can't hear you either because I'm on headphones.
I know you're on a headphone.
Yeah. So for me, I have the delineation I have when it comes to Facebook is I post a lot of pictures of my kids on Facebook, and then my wife, who just walked in, has a Facebook account, hasn't logged in 9 months. Literally has not logged in 9 months. Her friends will communicate with me on Facebook if they want to ask her a question, and so she's not on Twitter. She's Google Plus. I think I accidentally signed her up for it when I logged into her account one day. So she doesn't participate in any of those channels. By choice, and I totally accept and respect that. For me, so because I'm kind of falling to that overshare category. If there's a continuum, and on the left is my wife, I am on like bleeding off the right. Like I probably, my dad at one point said to me, he goes, "You sure do post a lot of stuff on Facebook." So for me, when it comes to the friend request stuff, is my general rule, and I sort of try to follow as best I can. If I have not had a beer with you before, if your name doesn't come up and I say, "Oh yeah, I And a beer, I'm not saying you have to drink beer. I use that term generally, generically. Could
So
be
wine, scotch is okay?
Yeah, although I don't love scotch. But
tequila?
I've been known.
Okay.
And but everybody has that one bad experience with tequila, and then you don't. Yeah. But for the most part, for me, if I'm not in that, I don't friend because I post so much stuff about my kids.
Right.
And also, I don't want people that don't want to see all that. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't care about. Not they don't care about kids. They don't care about my kids.
Right.
So I want only people that are going to be valuable to or interesting to. But for the rest of the stuff, I really use heavily on Facebook the public versus friends.
Right.
So when I tend to post. The only thing I don't post publicly, I think, for the most part, is if I'm doing pictures of my kids.
Right.
Everything else goes public. And for me, kind of like you, I just blur those lines because, to me, I think what makes, it goes back to the beginning, we talked about being human. What makes you want to do business with me is that there's something that you can relate to.
Yep.
Right. So if I talk about infusion stuff, we've got that connection. If I talk about children, you have children too. We can make that connection. We're writing a book. And so those things about personal life are certainly interesting. We both live in the same state. I mean, those things are interesting. That's what people connect on. And let's be honest, it's nothing new. You do business with people that you, most of the time, that you like and respect and you want to do business with. You don't do business with, so for me, I blur those lines a lot. And sure, my friends from high school who see stuff about email marketing or marketing in general. I mean, you know what? As I can't remember who said it. Maybe Chris Brogan once said it. You can unfollow me. That's okay.
Right.
Stuff. I mean, I love the people that say, "Oh, I can't believe that you posted that." Well, you know what? If you don't like what I posted, it's not. Well, it's opt in, opt out.
Right.
Unfollow, unfriend, do whatever you want to do. That's cool.
Well, I learned not too long ago. It was. When was it? February, I guess, late February. My wife had surgery on her thyroid, and it was an overnight deal. And we've been married 18 years. And people that know me, I mean, I'm a jokester, right? And her surgery was down in La Jolla, right by Torrey Pines.
Yeah.
And this is where I learned. I turned off the all public because I had a client that we were getting sideways on. And I was doing updates to everybody, and the way they knew the surgery was okay, because I'm joking, right? Hey, everything's fine, but, I'm missing my tee time at Torrey Pines. I'm only going to play 9 holes, instead of 18. And this client started ragging on me. We weren't even connected on Facebook, but I had it all set to public so they could see what I was writing. Like, how could anybody be so insensitive? I'm like, okay, I turned the public off.
Yeah.
It's like...
Well, the other downside of that too is if you travel. I don't know if you've seen this at all, but if you experienced this at all before. But I know if I go in, whether it tags because of the location or you post like, "Hey, I'm in." Like last week, I was in Madison.
Right.
And wait, was that last week? Yeah, last week I was in Madison, and all of a sudden you have people coming out of the woodwork, which is I'm not complaining. But oh, hey, let's grab a beer. Well, the reality is I don't. There's two things happening. Either I don't have time,
right,
or I really don't want to.
Right.
I know.
And
so I think once but there's no turning back. I think if you're going to be that public with your personal and business life, you have to expect some of those things are going to happen. And, you tune them out when you can, or you say, "Hey, sorry, I'm not able to do that." I think it has to, the answer is if your personality is such that blend works for you, then do it. If you're somebody that likes to keep work here and personal here, then that works as well.
So how do we get interviewed and get found and get to participate in famous Google Hangouts like you just did? I mean, how do people go about? Is this a conscious effort? Like, do you have a plan, like for PR and things like that, or
didn't I tell you earlier? I wrote down this on my notebook. Write down goals. You think I have a plan if I don't even have my own goals written down?
Come on, man. You might have a PR plan.
No, here's the deal. And this has not changed forever when it comes to business. Business, we talked at the very beginning, it's about trust, it's about being human, and it's about building relationships. And I'll take this all the way back for you. So this book that I wrote, The Rebel's Guide to Email Marketing, I co-wrote with Jason Falls, who wrote No Bullshit Social Media. And Jason Falls I met probably 4 years ago when I was at or maybe probably 4 years ago when I was at Blue Sky Factory, and he was a client. And so, all of these, I connected with him a long time ago, right? And he since introduced me to, so this was after, and we met, and then we wrote the book together, and he had been writing for Entrepreneur magazine for several years at that point, writing a weekly column around social media. So he connected me with the guy there, Jason Fell, and Jason asked me to write a column. So, it really comes back to this idea that you have to have those connections. You have to have those relationships. And, to name drop one more time, he also, Ann Handley does, from Marketing Profs, does some writing for their publication, for the Entrepreneur publication. So, and I had written contributed to one of her articles at one point. So basically what had happened is it's about, I built those relationships over time. And at some point that relationship came back where Jason was able to introduce me to the other Jason. Well, interestingly enough, it was Jason Falls and Jason Fell. So kind of an interesting, similar last names, different tense of the same last names. And so he connected me to Jason. And then, I got part of this Team Digital. And next thing you know, I was doing a Google Hangout. And so, I think the key is that all that stuff is to just go back. You got to build those relationships, and you never know when that's going to come back. I mean, the fact that you and I met in November and have had some communication since, and all of a sudden now it's June and I'm on your podcast. I mean, and who knows? Maybe we do some business together at some point. But it goes back to that. If you lead with, you walk into the room and say, I'm DJ Waldow, I wrote a book, and who wants to be my client? It's just not how it works. You build the relationship over time, and eventually, if it works, it works. If not, at least you're doing something fun, I hope.
So whose idea was it to write the book?
Jason Falls. Yeah, so Jason actually, a little insider baseball stuff on this. He came to me and he wrote, in fact, I think we first talked about this at Blog World in LA in November, actually not right around the same time I was at Infusion PartnerCon. And he said to me, I no bullshit social media. I'm thinking about doing a no bullshit email marketing and maybe do this whole series. So originally we were going to do that. And frankly, not that I'm opposed to cursing, but it just didn't fit my personality as much. Right. I think that if you know Jason Falls, that's him. Right. And I wasn't sure I wanted that, so we decided, well, maybe we just do something that's kind of separate. We came up with this Rebels Guide, and so he approached me. He already had a publisher, and it actually came together pretty quickly. At least the proposal and stuff. Writing the book took a little longer, but came together pretty quickly. So that that relationship with Jason 4 years ago has turned into a book, has turned into a connection with Entrepreneur magazine, and interestingly enough, where he's working right now at Cafe Press. His boss, Joe Schmidt, started a company years ago called Canvas on Demand in Raleigh, North Carolina. And Joe Schmidt, this is when I was an account manager at Bronto, email provider in North Carolina. I was Joe Schmidt's account manager. And now Joe Schmidt is Jason Falls' boss.
Right.
So it's just, it's like this just the older you get, the more experience you have, their worlds just start to collide together.
So what did you have, though, before the book? I mean, how y'all met at Blog World, but what were you doing before then to make him even think to come to you for this?
I mean, I'd started my own company 6 months before, and I've been in this email marketing space for actually next month will be 8 years. So I've worked 4 years at Bronto, 2 years at a company called Blue Sky Factory. I've been living, eating, drinking, breathing, sleeping, dreaming email marketing for 8 years. There's, I don't like using the term expert, but I'm certainly somebody that has done it for long enough that I know it as well as many people because I've just been just like anything else you do. I don't know that I've done, the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours, but probably pretty close.
Well, 8 years. 2,000 hours a year. I don't know. That's 16,000 if my math's right.
Yeah.
You, sir, are an expert, and you heard it right here first on the Sales
Yes.
Podcast. Yeah, baby. All types of gems here. Well, very cool. We've gone, I don't know what, 40-something minutes. Any parting words of wisdom from this email expert, DJ?
Yeah, I mean, I think my big takeaway from the book, and I hope people get this from the book and just understand this if you've ever heard me talk, I try to bring it up every time, is this idea of best practices is really just, it's just not true anymore. I mean, I think ultimately, the mantra that I live by is, best practices are those that are best for your audience. It's what works best for your audience. Just because... I wrote a post about this a while ago. Chris Brogan did something really cool on social with Google Plus and did a video and grew his list that day by 400% that he normally does. And I knew somebody was going to write this in the post, so I knew that somebody was going to leave this in the comment, and so I just wrote it in the blog post originally. I said, I know you're not Chris Brogan. I'm not Chris Brogan. I'm not Wes Schaefer. I'm not Justin Timberlake. I'm not Ellen DeGeneres. But you have to test what works best for you. You can see case studies. You can see what works for other people. And that's a great starting point. It's a great way to say, hey, if it worked for Chris Brogan, let me test it. It worked for Wes Schaefer. Let me test it and see if it works for my audience.
Right. Yeah, so many people are just afraid to start. I'm like, dude, just jump in.
Well, I think what you have to remember, too, is that somebody gave me this advice once. I was taking a long time to launch my website. I had it read it, and I just couldn't pull the trigger. And they said, I go, well, I don't want this to be broken. They said, you know what? If something's broken, your community will tell you. And if they don't tell you, it means they didn't get to that page or they didn't click that link. So you're probably doing something wrong.
So it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, just nobody, we're in this business. Nobody dies in the business we're in. I mean, we're not, my wife delivers babies. There's a lot of risk there. But we do just try to have a little bit of fun.
Hey, you brought up Ellen. I almost forgot. I can't believe it. Tell me about your 90 days.
Don't think that wasn't intentional.
90 days to Ellen.
So a friend of mine here locally, his name is Brian Kramer, runs an agency called Pure Matter. He and I were sitting down, it's his wife and my wife, we were sitting down at dinner, about a month and a half ago. And again, I told you my wife does not do anything with social media, is not, and she and we became friends through social media. So we're proof that it actually can work and develop real relationships. And my wife is a disbeliever, naysayer, if you will. And so we sat down there. We're like, what if we could actually prove that we could use social media to meet somebody that was reachable, was somebody that was very outgoing but really unattainable. I mean, some celebrity. And we went through all sorts of different names, and we came up with Ellen DeGeneres. And we said, wouldn't it be cool is if we set up a campaign and then in 90 days, it took us 3 months, but we could use social media and social media only to get Ellen DeGeneres to sit down and have lunch with us. Not a big paparazzi thing, not a big media frenzy. We don't want to be on her show, though that would be cool. But we want to sit down and just have a genuine lunch and hang out and talk with her. And so we started this campaign. I literally bought the domain at dinner, and we built a site called 90 Days to Ellen, and we used that hashtag. And in fact, just today we did Brian and I were together pitching some business together, and we did a little video on Vine about 90 Days to Ellen. And so, I don't know, at this point, at the time of this recording, we're about 15 days in. We had a lot of traction on the first day. It's hard to sustain. It's hard to keep going.
Right.
But we had a lot of people who said, this is great. I can connect you directly with Ellen's producers. Let me put a call in. But the thing is, we don't want to do that. We want to do it through social media. We want Ellen or somebody from her staff on Twitter, on Facebook, or on Vine to come back to us and say, we'd like to explore this. So we put in a little bit of charitable component to it recently. A charity that she supports is called Feeding America. And okay. So we're trying to get different restaurants or anybody who serves a meal, basically, to contribute to that organization. And whoever contributes the most money will kind of sponsor our lunch.
Oh,
but
nice.
But of course, there's no guarantee, right? I mean, right. They could put money in, and Ellen still doesn't, see. But our goal is to kind of create some buzz and see if we can use social media to get something rolling.
Where is she? In Chicago? Where is she?
She's in L.A.
Oh,
yeah,
easy.
Should be.
So why, though, just social media? I mean, if social media gets you the call, I mean, for an entrepreneur, now, I mean, you and I are in the marketing business, so I mean, I get, you want to prove a point that social media can work, but if social media is a component, right, which is what I always teach, and we all teach it, multimedia, multi-step, multi-touch, sure. Right? So if it's a component that makes the phone ring, ultimately, I mean, 99% of entrepreneurs, that's what they want, right?
Yep. No, you're right, and we've thought about that. I think we're trying to be we're probably a little idealistic in this. I mean, because there was one guy who came out right away and said, and I said, well, geez, if they can, let's touch base with that producer on Facebook or on Twitter. And he said, well, they're not on either of those social channels. And so you're right. I mean, I think if we, we're just trying to see if we can do this really all
sure.
through social.
Yeah.
But you're right. You're right. I mean, ultimately, if we could get lunch with her, I would do.
Because eventually they'll have to send you an email, because if they post on your page where you're going to have lunch, you'll be swamped.
Right. Sure. At some point, there'll be an offline component to it, but yeah.
You could use like this whole enigma, right? You could have like code, and I don't know. It could work, man. Let's take it to another level.
Let's first see if we get a bite. I mean, my hope is, I joke with my wife, I hope, I mean, she's in a win-win for her. I mean, if it doesn't work, she's proven us wrong. If it does work, she gets to have lunch with Ellen. So well,
tell her she's not invited unless she supports you.
But actually, in all seriousness, I watch Ellen, every day. I'm hoping for that one day that she's going to be on that show and all of a sudden say, have you guys seen this 90 Days to Ellen thing? And I'm kind of hopeful for that moment. But
right.
If it works, great. If it doesn't, it's been a fun ride.
Hey, I like it. I was thinking, all right, who could I do 90 days to? I'm like, Donald Trump. I don't know. I may do the same thing, man. I love it. I thought it was great.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can prove it works.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, thank you, sir, for taking your time on a Friday afternoon. I'm glad the kids took a nap. I'm glad my big dog didn't bark. So thanks for taking the time. I will have this posted up next week, and I look forward to seeing you soon at a conference nearby.
Sounds good.
Well, good luck with Ellen, and good luck with your next book, whatever that may be. You got one you're working on, right?
I am not working on a new book right now.
All right. Well, I'll just post this, The Rebel's Guide to Email Marketing. It'll be on the Sales Whisperer site. What's up?
That's Ava saying hello. You can say hello, Ava, if you want. Say hi into here.
What's up, Ava?
Hi.
All right. Hey, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, man. Have a good weekend.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bam. That concludes my interview with the awesome DJ Waldow. If you would be awesome yourself, which I know you are, please visit iTunes and leave a 5-star rating there. And also visit thesaleswhisperer.com/session4 and leave some comments and constructive criticism and feedback there. I would appreciate it. Building up the comments helps, and when I see that, when I see you doing work as well, I'll do my best to visit your site and do the same. But when you leave comments and feedback and promotions for others, it's easier for you to ask the same for your own work. So, like they say in B&I, right? Givers gain. Thanks again for listening. Here's some great tunes to put you in a good mood. Peace out.